Okay, so a question was asked to me, if we have a model that uses too many textures, how can we have the model just use one texture? Okay, so it's really not that difficult. Basically, all you're going to do is just take your original model, um, you know, clone it, copy it, whatever. Create a new UV texture layout, and then you just basically use projection to transfer over the uh, texture information to the new map. It's extremely straightforward. All right. Now, I asked him to send over a sample file, and this is what he sent me. And I've been doing this long enough, and I'm pretty sure I know what this is. This is a 3D model rip from the game Metal Gear Solid 3, or it has to be one of the Metal Gear Solid games. And back in that time, period of time, it was on the PlayStation 2, I'm sure. Um, and the PlayStation 2 had a really small amount of video memory. And so what they had to do to get the data or information uploaded there is to send small resolution textures and send a lot of them in a stream. So in today's graphics and stuff like that, that's not really ideal. We just use one large texture map. Um, so that's the difference between the old games and new games. Is yes, in the old times you would see a lot of these texture maps. And so I've dealt with, porting over models from that time period where you might see, a dozen or maybe hundreds of textures just on one character model. And so I've done enough to say this pretty confidently that it is better to manage those than it is to adjust the model. Okay, so when you're getting into editing the model, like, adjusting the UV maps, remapping the textures and things like that, you're opening a whole new thing that you don't want to get into. Trust me, I've dealt with projects where you're porting over not just one model, but let's say 100 models. And the more work you get yourself involved with, the more arduous the task will be, and you'll most likely drop the project before it's finished. I've gotten to a project like, okay, yeah, I'll do 100 of these models. I do one, it takes me a week. I'm like, I'm done. Here's this one model, I'm done. So you want to reduce the amount of work, and so by saying, hey, you know what? I just want to put this on all one texture. Can I do that in a snap? No, you can't. It involves a thing called editing, and editing takes time. So I'm going to show you right here real quick before I continue the rest. But this is for a different kind of thing that I was doing. But same thing. I had a lot of materials, and I had to get the materials configured in such a way. So I wrote this tool to help myself do that. I could select multiple textures or multiple, not textures, but multiple objects, and we can update, texture information or color information or shader information, tweak those and apply those to the selected objects. Okay. Now this is not for, whatever. I don't know what his needs are. Is he porting it to a game engine, or is he just bringing it to 3dsmax? I don't know what his needs are. So this is nothing. This means nothing to him. I don't know, uh, if that's useful or not. But it's basically a work in progress for myself. I wrote it for myself, so I doubt it has any, relation to this. But the meaning in there is just, you can find alternatives to just manage, that amount of textures or whatever. But anyway, let's say yes, you have to get it into one texture map, and it could be for, a reason. Number one, maybe you want to recreate the entire model. You want to, bring it up to today's standards. Okay, this isn't quite really what you want to do that, but yeah, you could have that reason. Or maybe the game engine you're porting it to only allows you to have one large texture map per object or per character. That could be a thing, could be a limitation that you're stuck on. Okay, so yeah, there are reasons to do it, and there's two ways you can do it. The first way you could do it is just, create a new texture layout, right? And you can do that in two ways. I'm going to say you can just take the original layouts and just pack them together in a different arrangement, or you can, like I said, recreate it all from scratch. And from that, you can do it, either manually doing it, or you could do it with a auto UV system. I'm not sure if 3dsmax supports that, but using ZBrush, I've discovered that you can just, use the UV master, and then bam, you have a set of, unwrapped UV coordinates that you can just start going. You don't even worry about it; just keep going. So that might be a thing. You can just generate a whole new set of UV coordinates. You can create them, right? Or you can reorganize the ones that are already there. Okay, really simple. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of both those. So I'm going to make a clone of my object. To do that, I held down the Shift key and dragged across my object. And when you release, you'll get the dialog. Okay, if that's something that you're not comfortable with doing, you can just go to Edit, go to Copy, or actually, sorry, it's called Clone. Or you can hit the Control V key. Okay, so we're gonna make a clone. Call this clone 1. Now, oops, where's my clone? Oh, I must have cloned the wrong thing. Undo, undo, undo. That's weird because I gave it the name clone, but that's not what I got. Okay, the model pulled back into the other model because of the skinning on the modifier here. So I'm just going to delete this on the stack. That way it won't bind to the skeleton. So this is just a normal edible mesh. I'm going to make 2 clones of it. Very cool. I'm going to hide this thing. So they're called clone 1, clone 2. Okay, that's good. So for the first one, we're going to rearrange the UV layout. And it's really quite easy to do. Oh, okay, so this is actually, there's an issue with this model, and that's because the faces are broken. I know the faces are broken because the green highlighted edges depict where the bounds are of the element. And so it's showing that every polygon is an element. And so that means that the faces are broken. This is not good. Okay, so for example, this is probably the arm, correct? So this would be an element, but the problem is it's not. It's actually broken up quite a bit. And so this would be bad. So if I try to do the packing right now, if I go to Tools and Pack, okay, it's actually rearranging and packing individual polygons instead of individual elements. So we have to do something. This is undesirable for us. So I'm just going to delete this. We need to make sure that the polygons are welded together. So I'm going to make sure that all the vertices are selected. Go down the welds. Make sure you weld by this amount, 0.001, or the lowest amount that you can get. So I'm going to click on weld, and appears that we don't have anything needing welding, so that's okay. Now we're going to add another modifier for the tongue twister, Unwrap Uvw Modifier, which will allow us to edit things. We're now going to weld this thing together. Now, you want to weld them per element, right? Now, it might take you a long time depending on how many elements you have. Okay, so we have like, what, 25? What if you have 2,500, right? It's too much. You don't want to be doing 2,500. So I'm going to show you a faster way to do it. We're just going to weld everything at the same time. So we're going to show everything at the same time. Select those. And same thing, we're going to weld those by the lowest amount that you can. Right click and weld. Okay, so they're all welded together, but that's a problem. So what we're going to do is use a tool called Detach by ID. I did not write it. I got it off of ScriptSpot, and props to the author. What we're going to do is we're going to click on Detach. And it's going to detach those individual elements based on their texture ID, like whatever texture you apply to it, it's going to have a material. So it's actually separating by material ID, but they'll be separated by whatever texture we're using. So that's what we want. Now, one thing to note about this program, I don't know if they updated it, but the author updated it. But it creates a dummy file down by the feet, and we're going to have to delete that. Ooh, how am I going to find that? That might be it there. Nope. Let's hide that. Where is it? This is probably it. What happens if you go to Properties, you'll find that there's an object with 0 faces and 0 vertices. That's a dummy, so you kind of want to get rid of that because it's not going to be any use to you. Other than that dummy, get rid of it. These should be individual objects based on their material ID. So that's what you'd want. And now we're just going to do an attachment. So we're going to click on any one of the objects and go down to, where is it? Attachment list or attach list. And we're going to attach all those little pieces back into a solid object again. Okay. So what this has done is it welded it, and then it broke apart those polygons so that we get the UV breaks again, but in the proper edges and things like that. So now we can go back to Tools and go to Pack UVs, and we should get a nice repack. Okay. Now the only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't pack them by their relative size. It just packs them by how they were represented. So, for example, this pouch here is really quite small compared to his chest, right? So this is the pouch here. Well, dig this. This is his entire shirt. So his shirt would actually be this size in relation to the pouch. So we're actually losing definition on the shirt in favor of definition on the pouch, and that's wrong. This should actually be scaled larger to make it retain the amount of pixel density over the pouch. So I'm just going to resize the things that need to be, or have more pixel density, and then I'm going to repack it. Right? So this is the result of it. Okay. So we're basically just rearranging the UVs that already exist into a different arrangement. Okay. Now, another thing that might cause us issue later on is where they weld in two things of the same thing. For example, if I select this thing, actually that's a bad example. Okay, here's a good example. They have this one layout, okay, is actually doing two things at the same time. It's doing left and right earpiece. That's incorrect because it's actually overlapping. So what you would want to do is go around and attach or break apart those things that are shared. And so this is where it can get a little bit tedious because you're going to have to break these things apart. If you don't, it's actually going to make the what do you call it? The projection actually come out kind of bad. So let's see. We're going to have to break these up. And so forth and so forth. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, wow. So you can see here how, like, the shoe, it actually uses up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different layouts just to make up the shoe. That's pretty crazy. Let's see about the hand. Usually the hands are pretty bad, too. Yeah, that's insane. Just the hand alone uses, like, probably, almost a dozen different layouts. So yeah, that can be probably not a good option, is to optimize that thing, right? Because there's so much to go through. Let's just repack this the last time here, and we'll leave it at this, and we will project on this and see how it goes. Okay. We're now prepped the second method that you would preferably want to do, which is to remap the entire model, right? So being broken does not matter because it's going to be completely redone regardless, right? So, things you'd want to do is, use the tools that are given to you. And I would say that 3dsmax does not have the best tools for unwrapping. And, I don't know what features the new one has in terms of new mapping features, but the ones they had up to like the 2016s, or not, I was using up to 2011, and so they were always kind of crappy, to be honest. But you can use different projection methods here to get what do you want to call it? Your model unwrapped properly. I'm just gonna do this quick and dirty, not not anything you would do really, but just to get this demonstrated. All right, so there's our model, and if we want to repack it, break off parts of the model here. Excuse me. Again, that's in no way the way you would actually unwrap anything. That's like the most improper way you could possibly do that. But that's just to demonstrate that you use the tools applied to yourself to get a proper unwrapping. Whatever's. So we're just gonna go to tools, pack, great. Ooh, the density there was screwed up. Let's try that again. Pack, cursive, rotate, normalize, fill. Still kind of bad, but whatever. So this is just to demonstrate the two different ways you can do it, right? So you can do it, just reorganizing, okay, or you can recreate from scratch. And this can be done either within 3dsmax or with a separate program, using either automatic means or assisted semi-auto means or something like that to create a properly designed layout. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use projection, and you don't have to use projection in 3dsmax. I find that 3dsmax has quite a confusing way of doing projection, which other applications such as GBrush really takes the complications out of it and makes it more easy for the user, I find. But maybe this is something that you have access to, or you don't only have access to, so you have to use it. So it will do. So we are going to basically put the mesh that we want to project onto in the same space as the object we're projecting from. So I'm going to use the alignment function. So I'm going to select this object. Then I'm going to click on alignment. Then click on the object I want to align to. Okay, and we can align by position, X, Y, Z, and we can do by pivot. That's more preferred. And just leave that alone, and that should be it. Okay, so this is the dialog for the projection. I've already set the directory for my project directory, so we'll be getting our texture map in here. I'm going to just add some padding here. I'm going to enable the projection, and I'm going to project from the original model that I had. We can click on options. We're not going to bother tweaking the stupid cage, so we'll just leave it on offset. I usually do about 1. And we're going to want to get the closest that we can get, and that should do it. Okay. We're going to add a map type, so we're going to use a diffuse map. And we're going to use a high resolution. And that should be it. Should be good. Right. So we hit render. Continue. And this is the new texture map that we're getting based on the UV layout. Okay. Now, you're seeing this red stuff here. This is actually the projection failed to project. And an error and couldn't get a proper projection and couldn't get texture information or whatever. And so this can be caused by a lot of things. Overlapping polygons is most likely the cause. Polygons are, intersecting or overlapping or something like that, which cause this symptom. Okay. So let's look at our map that got exported here. And so yeah, you can see it's got quite the problems on it. Now, if you add more padding, I think it might actually seclude some of the red stuff, because it's pulling pixel information from the surroundings, so it might cover some of the red stuff up. So let's apply this texture map to our new model that's been projected. Pull it back out of here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, we can delete that modifier. And our new texture map is here. Okay. Okay, that didn't map out pretty good. That yeah, it turned out pretty bad. Shoot. Anyways, so this is just using the rearranged textures, right? So if we had an issue, you would have to find the original texture and just resize it over the layout here, and you can kind of restore the missing pixels. Or you can use some touch-up in Photoshop just to get rid of some of the red, and you know, get that the image restored or something like this. So yeah, we do have some issues, and I would say mostly caused by overlapping things like that. Okay. So overall, our model is looking at like 80% done or 90% done, but there's still tweaking that has to be done in terms of the texture map. So you'd have to tweak. You could tweak the UV map more to get some of this stuff kind of to project correctly, or probably just best to just tweak the texture itself in a Photoshop kind of application. Right, so that's the projection there. Let's try on the other temp that we other style that we took there. So same thing, we're going to align it to this mesh here. Padding, projection, oops. I'm going to enable it on our original model. Use cage, no. One, closest. Okay. This was not brought up, but you should be using channel 1. I've seen it sometimes people import ripped models and they have multiple channels. Just make sure you're always on the existing first channel. Okay. Again, we're going to add diffuse map, high res, render. Okay. Now, we really shouldn't get any ray trace errors, so we shouldn't see any red. And this is because none of our polygons are really overlapping. You know, if we had done a proper job, then you know the polygons would be described correctly. So let's pull this model out again. And we're going to use our new texture map. Here we go. Okay. So there is still some kind of issue here. I'm not sure what's causing that. That again would have to be kind of touched up or whatever. This could be from, you know, our projection distance or something like this. You know, maybe if we use the cage, we could get a better result or something like this. But overall, from the 80% done, we get more of a, like a 99 or 98% done. Still some issues there. You'd have to use a combination of, well, I would say, yeah, probably just, you know, again, Photoshop editing to get it, you know, closer to where you need to get it. Okay. But this is, you know, basically, you know, as far as you can get it with this kind of method where you tweak and then project. And there's always going to be some problem with the projection, either some problem with the model in seclusion or the UVs that you have are overlapping polygons or something like this. Okay. So just to give a quick demonstration of what overlap really means, is let's create a 3D object here. It's a cylinder. Okay. In our 2D view, we're going to be seeing this. So what's actually happening is the model is being collapsed on one of the axes, and when you're looking at it from one, you know, view, the front faces and the back faces are being represented in the same space, and so that's what we call overlap, which is incorrect. Because what if the backside is dark textured or whatever, and the front is light textured? Well, they can't be both. They would be like there'd be confusion on what's dark, what's light, and you would get you know, a problem there. So that's the improper way of doing it. The way it should be done is the faces are all represented front facing from the same view. So let me just give a little demonstration of what that was meant by that. Let's just push this out so we can get this like this. And of course we're going to flatten it. So imagine you're flattening. The difference is now the back is represented from the front view. All the faces are represented from the front, or the one view, and there should be nothing on the back. This would give you a better result because there's no overlapping faces. They're all represented from the same front view. Okay, so when you're doing a new UV layout, you strive to get that sort of correctness, and where we get the problems from is the original model. The original model that we have, we just rearranged its layout, but the UV layouts that were created from that original were kind of bad. They were overlapping, and this is why we see these symptoms on this, things like this, things like the straps and things like that, or the foot, because they're sharing a lot of textures and they're overlapping a lot of polygons, and so the projection doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know what texture information to grab, so it gives you an error by signifying a black or not a black but a red pixel, and so that's why we have these problems. All right, so there's only one last thing I need to show you is another alternative way of doing it, which I started using to get them into a single texture map. Later on, I just gave up on the idea, and I deal with it. If I have 100,000 textures, I just deal with it. I manage them. I find ways to do that quicker and things like that. But when I start introducing ways of combining things, it actually takes more work than it's worth. So that's why I don't tend to do it anymore. But I'm going to show you what I used to do, years back when I was getting into porting ripped models and when I wanted to convert it into a single texture map. So we're going to delete these, and we're going to create another clone. Oops. Okay, so we're going to run the same detach by ID script here. I'm just going to make sure that the names from the texture maps are pulled and applied to the new objects. I click attach. Okay. So now we have our divisions. Just make sure you get rid of that dummy again. That's an object that doesn't have any vertices or faces, and we want to get rid of that. Okay. Right. Now, why we have done this is because we're going to serialize, or what's the word? I'm not sure, but we want to get the textures in an array, a texture array, so that we can apply it back to the objects. So what I've done in this 2D editor, this is just PaintShop Pro. It's a JASIC, which is now owned by Corel, but it's an old application that I'm used to using, so I'm just using this. But what you can do here, you can, of course, do in the latest version of Adobe Photoshop or something like that. Okay. So let me just get the premise of what I've done. So we have a bunch of... Did I run out of undos? Why do I have this white stuff on here? Okay. We have a bunch of texture maps in here that are applied to the model. Okay. So what I've done is I've resized them. Okay, so this is an 8 by 20. I've resized it to 256. Okay. I resized them all to 256, and I packed them into the space of 2048 by 1024. And I started adding them into these pockets, and I put them into an array. Okay, so I put them in order of their alphanumeric order. So 12 B comes before 12. 12A becomes before 12B. I put that one on first, this one second, this one third, so forth and so forth. So this goes here, this one goes here, this one goes here. Oops, not literally, and so forth and so forth. And the way I arrange this is I want this way, and I want this way, and this way, until I hit the end. All right. And so what we've essentially created is a grid pattern here. So if I turn on the grid, you can see that we have our textures into a grid. And this is so that we can divide them correctly and move them in a grid fashion. All right. So now that we have in a grid, now you have to kind of know what grids are. Okay, so a grid, you're going to have a 0 axis, which is going to be this, right? So it's going to be 0, 0 is here. And then as you travel along the x, your x value changes. So this is x, and this is y. So this one will be 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, and then so forth, of course. And then as you increment and you go up to the next row, this would be 1. Sorry, that's not 1. That's 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, 1, whatever, and so forth. Okay, so you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Okay, so that's how the grid works. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to, now that we have this grid, texture grid, we're going to apply this grid to our model so that we can apply it to this pattern here. So what I've done is I created that grid there, and we're going to apply this to the model. Oops. This thing here, we're going to apply that. So put this here for a second. So what I can do is I can just drag and drop this onto an object. Oops. And then when I go into my material editor, I can select this. And then with that selected, I can select multiple objects and then drag that material to the object. And now I would have the same material. So this is all the same material. And this is a script that I wrote. And with this script, we can apply the array. So the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the x and 4 on the y. So we can type in 8 by 4. Okay. And this direction thing here, that means, we're going this way, or, depending on which way you want to go, that would be go that way, or that way, or whatever. Okay. So we're going to start off with this way and see what we get. So we're going to select all our objects here, and we're going to click on Apply. And it's applied the array. So if there was some issue here, we didn't get anything that looked anything remotely close, we can change the direction. Okay, cool. The short stuff there. Okay, so this was the correct direction, I suppose. Okay. Now, if something wasn't correct, let's say this was wrong. Yeah, whatever. If it would look like that, then you could move around and shift to the correct grid pattern. Okay. You just kind of have to get an idea of where you are. So if I'm, let's say, this looks like the finger or whatever, right? So I'm like here. Let's get rid of all this stuff here. So it looks like I'm sitting, whoops. Looks like I'm sitting around here, right? Just judging from this texture here. So I probably want to travel here. Here? So I go up and over? Oh, that's cool. I don't know, I think it's like that or whatever. All right, so you can use these functions to kind of move around. Like this doesn't look correct, so let's try to fix these. Oh, that's confusing. Where the heck am I? That might actually be it, actually. No, that doesn't look right. There we go. Alright, so basically you can use the 4 directions to kind of get a brute force over the majority of the textures, and then you kind of, you kind of brute force these things, I guess, to kind of get the right combination, but yeah. And so now the UV layout that we have, if I combine all of these objects together, attach list, it'll now be in a grid fashion, based on our new, our texture layout, okay? Alternatively, what you can do, which I found takes longer, is, of course, you're going to make a copy of this thing, go to your layout. Oops. And you're just going to select the material IDs. Oh man, I gotta pick it every time. It's annoying. Let's go back here. And then you're going to resize it and place it to where you need to put it in your new layout, right? So, what the heck am I? Where do these polygons come from? Oh, the belts. Yeah, and you just resize those and place those in the correct slot or spot. Sorry, not slot. Spot of where you have those textures. That the texture layout for that UV layout, I guess. Right. So that, in my opinion, is a little bit confusing. You'd have to understand the layout quite well. But that's another way you could do it, is just, if you have a different texture layout, you can match up your UV layouts just by moving the layouts around. All right. So many different ways you can do it. The way I did it in the past, while using the array style, it produces the model on a 1-to-1 scale, meaning you're not really losing anything. The positions will be like the UV positions will be exact with the texture positions, because you're using a layout that's mathematically correct and should result in a 1-to-1 model. And if you do the layout in a higher resolution than the original, then you're not losing any pixel density or anything such as that. What you're actually doing is you're actually creating a larger texture map, and you're actually losing, or you're gaining texture size. You're losing on that because you're actually increasing the texture resolution. If your goal is to reduce texture size, because in some projects I could have an output that's 200 megabytes because of the texture resolution. So usually I don't like that scenario. So this might result in a large texture map. For example, this one's sitting at half a megabyte, but if it was any bigger, 4K, maybe looking at maybe like 4 megabytes, right? Okay, so those are the different methods that I used in the past, and things like that. Again, I do emphasize, if you have multiple textures, consider management. Don't get too involved with recreating the model. If you want to update the model to current day standards, consider throwing it into something like ZBrush, where you convert it into a Dynamesh. You brush back in the details on a polygon level, and then you can produce new texture maps, you create a new UV layout, and create those, beautiful diffuse, normal maps, light maps, ambient occlusion maps, all those great things, the proper way, in the proper pipeline, generating a, current gen model that's compatible with our current gen game engines. Okay, so yeah, consider that. But those are the ways I would perform those kind of actions in the past, and I hope that was helpful to you guys. And thanks for watching.